Humankind, while it's had some balance bumps and bugs during its open dev scenarios, is still shaping up quite nicely. I was invited to a closed event hosted by Amplitude a couple of weeks ago, where we were able to play to the industrial era and chat with the development team. If you want to see my thoughts on the industrial era, you can find the video in the top right corner. I wanted to break up my content into two big segments, one focused on that industrial era, and the other focused on the questions and update information we asked about during our playthrough and in an interview afterwards. Before we get into it, a quick note. Everything discussed in this video is part of the development process and as such is always subject to change and may vary in accuracy by launch. That's all I got, so let's take a look at some of the questions asked by your favorite content creators with regards to the entire game that is Humankind. There's no catchy segue into this next section like the last video, so let's just get straight into some development updates I'm allowed to discuss based on my time asking Cat o' Nine Tails and the after event interview. This will not have any sort of order or structure, but there are a handful I'd like to touch on. The first and most interesting development piece for myself was how the AI handles era progression and fame points. One of my critiques for the AI was that they leveled up ASAP once they hit those era stars, which put them slightly ahead of you for a short period of time, but allowed the player to hang back and overtake them with their fame point generation further down the line. I was very pleased to hear that the AI handles this very differently depending on your game difficulty. On the easier difficulties, the AI will try to push era progression as quickly as possible to try and grab some of the most sought after cultures and level up fast, at the expense of leaving behind potential fame points. Those higher difficulties, you'll see the AI hang back much more often, looking to wrap up a few more turns to get that extra 150 fame points or more before moving on. This means that not only will the AI get those buffs on a higher difficulty, which still seems to be the only effective way to give them an advantage over the players, they'll start playing smarter with regards to fame attainment, providing you with an even more difficult task of deciding when you should move on or hang back, and I love that implementation. Another great update is with regards to the Huns and Mongol units and their double move, double attack feature. This is a small change, but it's now limited to move, attack, move only. Simply removing that double attack alone helped with the game balance when I fought against them, so I'm happy to see they found a middle ground to address it. There's not much else to say on this one, but it does feel like something I needed to say. The last big update that I personally asked during the interview was about the battle initiation and first mover advantage, which is one of the biggest issues with Victor and a rather potentially multiplayer killer, in that the first move advantage almost always was a victory for that first move. While not 100% sure on the exact details, the team is looking at the earlier stages to buff the defensive status for defending units during a battle, and that all of these units will have that defender status right at the start of the battle to combat it. In the later eras, when you're looking at mostly ranged units, again, the team isn't 100% on this, but there will be various fun things they are looking to implement, like trenches and various forms of cover, with a possibility of a ranged counterattack if it balances out. This is great news to hear and allowed a big sigh of relief for myself when they said it during the interview. They have definitely seen that first move advantage problem is a big problem and are addressing it quickly, and hopefully this will balance out what we saw in Victor Open Dev, and it gives me a good vibe for how multiplayer might work out by release. This section I'll dedicate to the random assortment of questions related to the game overall from the interview, which I've dubbed Overall Game Details. I'm winging that title 100%. Maps? For Humankind, just like other unnamed 4X turn-based strategy games, there are several presets at our disposal. We've got a lot of sizes for maps, from small to what is dubbed as huge. While we don't have a hex count per se for that largest huge map, the dev said it is significantly larger than the map we played, or from any of the open devs, and larger than any map created in Endless Legend, just for some sort of scale. You have various map types, from supercontinents to islands, multiple continents to just a small number of larger ones. Settings like the consistency of continent shape, i.e. are they similar looking or more chaotic and different in their design. You have temperature, landmass movement, water levels, humidity levels. All these things you can do to modify your map to make dang near exactly what you want to play in. Related to maps are the game's speeds, which have various levels as well. Blitz mode knocks the 300 turn standard to a fourth of that, or 75 turns. Yes, an entire game in 75 turns. While the slowest mode, I believe, either doubles the turns or slows down the production of resources. On average, based on their standards now, a regular game at 300 turns should be doable in about 8 to 10 hours in single player. Multiplayer is a bit different, of course, but it will be possible to slap a timer for every turn, so any other players aren't wasting everyone else's time. Now that a couple of simple and obvious questions are out of the way, we can dive a bit deeper into some of the more abstract pieces of the game. Beginning with cultural balance, it was a question that popped up not specifically geared towards esports, but just in general for single player and with the idea towards multiplayer. The devs had a great response to that I really hadn't thought about. Amplitude is not looking to balance every culture to each other. For one, with the millions of cultural combinations, it's quite literally impossible to balance every culture, as the decisions you've made in your previous culture choosings in past eras have a drastic effect as that era progresses. I talked about that in my last video. Not only that, but the idea of team building in different areas, finding that just right combination of cultural progression or district building is part of the fun in 4X strategy games, and to try and remove that 100% would take away the value of the game as a whole. It's not a response I expected, as I mentioned, but I did enjoy it, and it does indeed make sense. Having a totally balanced game that always kept you in check and wouldn't let you take advantage of mechanics would indeed spoil gameplay just a bit, especially when a good chunk of the 4X community trends towards being pretty min-maxy in their playstyles. This next one was a response that touched through a couple of different types of questions, and that's regarding diplomacy. Diplomacy has remained rather simple, although I have enjoyed most of what I've seen with it, bugs and functionality aside. But diplomacy for Amplitude inside Humankind is looking to be one of the dominant features of the game, and it becomes more and more important in the latter eras. As battlefields expand and alliances get solidified, it will become more and more crucial to have those established diplomatic actions available to call on your allies into a war that spans the width of the continent, or to have the backup should someone suddenly attack you. Being able to press your claims, valid or not, against other players in a natural way and make demands, these are all pieces of the diplomacy puzzle that are designed to create depth and an intricacy in Humankind that may not quite exist in other 4X games. I see the potential that this area has, and while I still believe it has a ways to go, if the team can really tackle this area, it will indeed stand out amongst the crowd of 4X turn-based strategy games and make playing this game even more fun. The last big question of the interview dealt with a more abstract community-based idea geared towards the devs. What do you hope that the community gains from playing a full game of Humankind? And what elements are the team most excited to see reactions from when people play it? And this took a dive, quite naturally and obviously, into a more philosophical approach to Humankind. What the devs most desire is that players see how the narrative of Humankind, the actual people of our Earth in real life, not just the game, is shaped by transitioning through different cultures and mechanics inside the game Humankind. No culture exists now that was the exact same culture when it first began. It's been influenced, good or bad, by other cultures throughout its history and the absorption of other cultures throughout its history. The goal, therefore, is to gain a sense of awareness in our current situation of the world and to appreciate where we've come from, where we are going, and to take what we see and hopefully change it in the game and make a better Humankind than the oftentimes mess that we currently live in. Another aspect that the team wants people to grasp is the gravity of your decisions in the game, the causality of your campaign, to build tension before war and understand how and why that war came about, and how diplomacy plays a huge part of how that all plays out and develops their narrative through all those systems in place. Overall, the interview was a blast to listen to, and it was great to hear some more fine details and intricacies that drove the team to where Humankind is today. I am continually excited for the game, and I hope that what you've seen thus far excites you too. That will be all for the dev updates and questions video for Humankind. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave your comments down below, give the video a thumbs up, sub to the channel, and of course, turn on those bell notifications. Be sure to stick around this channel for more Humankind development news and maybe some potential more preview events. No idea on that yet, just a hope. But anyways, this is Havoc, and I will see you all in the next video.